Hey, it's Willie Armelini from Flowers and Scents with your floral industry buzz. All right, today, part of my historical series, I'm going to interview Jim Hill and Dwight Haight. If you ever bought flowers from CFX or LaFlorete, you might know these guys. They're retired now, but they were one of the original people in the import business, and I thought it would be interesting to resurrect them and bring them back for a little bit of a interview. So without further ado, Jim Hill and Dwight Haight. Jim Hill and Dwight Haight, old friends of mine from many years ago. In fact, you know me so long, I'm pretty sure you're going to refer to me as Bill. Um, I've had several names since then, but anyway, it works just fine. And so delighted to see you. And like I say, I'm doing this. I didn't know I was doing an archive of the flower business, but anyway, as Zoom and as COVID hit, a little brief history on me. When COVID hit, my wife has been trying to move me back here to Orlando for 20 years. So when COVID hit, she looked at me and I looked at her, and there was no music, and I'd been playing in a band for years. Suddenly, it's like, okay, let's get out of here. So we came up here, and the Zoom, Zoom started to take off. Oh, we got to deal with our dog. It's okay. I've got all mine locked up. So suddenly I'm like, okay, what I've been doing for the last 10 years, the Flowers and Scents, this thing I created 20 years ago, has gotten popular. And somebody interviewed me, and I said, oh, I can do this. So I sort of turned the tides and said, let me do the Zoom thing and I'll interview people. And that, because I was used to going around all these countries, Bogota and Ecuador and Amsterdam, to go to the flower shows and take pictures of pretty girls and pretty flowers and put them on my website, and people bought advertisements. And that's sort of how this whole thing, got to this far. But so I've been sort of doing one of these a week, and I'm so delighted. So the question, Jim, I'm going to say to both of you, you guys were on the right track. Good. All right, CFX, Colombian Flower Exchange, and then LaFlorete. As you might be following the flower business, the bouquet business, went nuts. You were on the right track. The bouquet business and supermarkets have dominated here in the last 2 years for sure, because they were open. And that changed the whole dynamic here, I think. So you guys, I know it was way back when you got LaFlorete, and you sort of ended up with LaFlorete. Not sure you even wanted it, but you ended up with it and you got it. And it was the right thing to do at the time.
Jim, why don't you take that? Because LaFlorete was
Yeah.
We were obviously, like everybody, selling to the wholesale florist. And because I had worked for Kraft Foods and Scott Paper, I had some knowledge of the supermarket business, as well as I knew the people in the produce department at Publix in Miami. And so really the idea came to see if we could sell them flowers instead of throwing so many away during the off-market times. And approached the buyer at Publix, and he was somewhat interested, but didn't want to take any risks. So we did a store-door guaranteed sale for a period of time, but it was quite successful. And one day, after we'd been doing it, I think a couple of years, he called me in and we went over the numbers, and he thought it might be better if they did the distribution because he wanted to increase his margins. And so we went there, and that's kind of how we got off and rolling. And from there, really developed the program with Publix. And as we decided to expand, I went to Boston. They had a PMA show there, and I was not familiar with it, but I signed up and went. And that was good news, bad news. Tom Levigetto came up and looked at my roses and said, I'll take, I don't know what the number was, but we had nowhere near that amount. And I told him we did. And he said, then why are you here? And I said, I'm not sure. But anyway, we, like so many things with both CFX and LaFlorete, we learned as we went. And as you said, it developed and we developed over time.
Yeah, for sure. And it was just a, well, it sort of happened upon you, I guess. Were they just doing it in Miami originally? They were just showing, using the flowers in Miami? Or were they? Yeah.
The Miami division, they ran up north of Palm Beach and down into the Keys. So all the stores they had in the Miami division were then doing it, yes. And then, of course, it expanded to the other divisions.
Sure. And going back a little bit, again, this little history lesson here. You both worked for Sunburst, where that's how you ended up in the flower business, right?
Well, I think you have two different answers to that question.
Oh, okay.
Because I had a long history before that. A lot of people don't remember that probably the first American to pay attention to the possibilities of growing flowers in South America for the US market was Bill Seek of the Claymore C. Seek Company.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
This is
And,
before Edgar Wells and all those things, before that?
Edgar started just after the Seeks did, probably within a year or two.
Okay.
And I came out of high school and didn't really have a direction. And this young man knocked on the door one day we had a typical property for it. We lived with stores below and apartment above, which is where I lived with my mom. And this young man was a fellow named Ron Donahoe, who came from the Seek Company. He was a salesman there, a former Marine, and he knocked on the door because he wanted to rent the commercial space below because they were going to be bringing flowers from Quito. And this is
from Quito, not even
yes.
Bogota.
Oh yeah, no, and this is probably 5 or 6 years at least before Sunburst Farms.
Ooh.
So we rented on the property. Eventually, this young man, Ronnie, asked me if I was available to work part-time. I said, sure. And I did. Part-time became full-time. Eventually, I was in charge of the company. And at that point, Sunburst had started. And Harmon Brown ran into Jim Edgar somewhere and was talking about, what the future of the business was. And Jim said, you ought to get in touch with this guy, Dwight Haight. He's running the Seek enterprise. He's got years of experience. He knows the markets, he knows what's going on. Maybe you ought to consider hiring him. And there I went.
Wow. So they were coming from Quito before Bogota and before Sunburst. That's really interesting news.
Yeah. In fact, Hannaford got his start at the farms in Quito as well, and then went back to Bogota. I don't think he worked for Wells at the time. I think he might have worked for Gardens of the Andes at the beginning, and then joined and then came into the Sunburst Floral America group.
Wow. Well, and as we know, the Hannafords have done quite well. Juan Carlos has turned that business into a gigantic monster.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, as you might know in the business, if you're in touch with Gonzalo, I guess, the consolidation's been going on big time. The bouquet makers are buying up every farm that is willing to sell, I think, just to guarantee their production.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. And it's interesting when you look at it that way. You got to wonder if there's, where the wholesale is going to get their product eventually, unless there's more expansion there. Well, and maybe it's creating opportunity for people to.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on. People are, I've been interviewing different growers and stuff, and pretty much any decent grower, again, has had bouquet makers knocking on their door to see if they're interested in selling. If you've got good product and a good farm, and they're not buying this farms that are in distress. Maybe they are as well, but I mean, for the most part, they're buying good farms that are operating, and so they can hit the ground running and use that production. Very interesting.
Perfect sense.
It makes total sense, yeah. And people like Sunshine Bouquet came out of nowhere. It was a wholesaler, and now he's probably the biggest I think he's got the most hectares in South America that he's growing.
Does he?
Yep.
That's interesting. I thought it would have been Queens or
Well,
Elite.
yeah, I think what Queens, the Queens model seems to be that Herbert, who won't give me an interview, they just expand. They just keep adding. They're not buying anybody. They just keep adding, more hectares and more hectares on their own properties. I guess they don't seem to be aggressive buying stuff, or at least it's not so visible if it is. But Sunshine, Passion, Elite, all have been just sort of buying up everybody. That's been pretty interesting. And yes, so what that does, these sort of independent farms that were probably selling through the wholesale retail channel suddenly don't, that product's not available for the wholesale market anymore. So now that's strengthening some of the farms that that didn't sell or don't sell to the bouquet makers. But I would imagine almost any farm is selling somewhere, is selling bouquets or selling to the bouquet makers. So again, I think you were on the right track. Then when COVID hit and when the supermarkets were open, boy, that really turned a lot of people's heads. And here we are, and here we are now.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's to be the future because it's lower cost, higher volumes, and very accessible. You don't have to pick up a phone and figure out who to call, and are you going to spend, $50 or $100? You can go in and buy some beautiful flowers for $6.
Yep. My wife is at Trader Joe's buying them now. So they're, and by the way, flowers are lasting longer.
Yes, they sure are.
They are.
We had some Alstroemeria here. We got tired of dusting.
Yeah, same thing. We bought some, of all things, we bought some Godetia, which, it's not a flower you normally even see. And they lasted 10 days. They all opened. They were beautiful. We had some roses here today. We finally got tired of looking at them and she threw them out. But I think despite the logistic problems that we're having now, the flowers are in fact lasting longer. I think all the stuff that we've done, the post-harvest care and all the stuff that the Floor Life and everything are doing, it's apparently it's working because
yeah, no, it's remarkable. Again, going back, I can remember when everybody was thrilled to have a carnation that lasted 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
And now, they last for weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And looking good. So there's lots of varieties out there. A lot of flowers that would never have made it before are now being grown and transported. But so what we're facing now, of course, is this logistics nightmare. My family has got about half of their trucks parked because they can't find drivers.
Wow.
So it's a real dilemma.
I'll come on down, Bill. Don't worry.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, hey, you'll have to teach me how to drive one of those.
Well, yeah, hey, we'll teach you. Don't worry. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that. The planes, because of the cargo, because of the container dilemma of containers in the wrong places and stuff can't get here. They're buying these old planes, these 747s, or taking the 747s that would normally haul flowers, and they're heading to Asia to pick up, toys or whatever, PPE stuff. So they're really struggling to get flowers out of South America. That flowers used to be a wonderful backhaul for all the stuff going down.
Exactly.
Beautiful. They were light. They weren't heavy. They take up a lot
Freight
of
was
space.
cheap.
It was cheap. So it all worked until suddenly there's this demand for cargo, and they're pulling, obviously if they can get $4 a kilo versus 90 cents a kilo, they're, where they're going. And that's what's happening. So people are freaking out. And then with all this backlog of weddings and events that were happening or didn't happen over the last 2 years, are finally getting rescheduled. So the flower business, if you're following or not, is really hot.
Hot. I've heard. It's interesting too, and Jim would know more about this than I would, but not, 2 or 3 months ago, I had a pretty long conversation with Scott Hill, and among the many things we talked about was the fact that a lot of people are just putting them on ships in refrigerated containers now. It's again, it's a longer trip, but it's far less costly, and with good refrigerated containers, it's something they can do.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the last 10 years with that stuff. A lot of stuff has traveled via container. At the moment, I think they're not so much because there's such a demand. They don't want to wait the 14 days on this, traveling on the water. So right now, pretty much everything is, as soon as they're picking, they're shipping. If you can get it out by air, the challenge with containers we've learned over the years is that it works perfect when it's one farm to one consignee. If you're trying to do a LTL sort of one where you're taking several farms and trying to make one container, and a container holds a fair amount of flowers, so not every farm can pull it off. So when you try to consolidate those from a grower standpoint, and perhaps going to 2 or 3 different consignees, that's where it's got real complicated. So one-to-one relationship seems to work real good, but you're correct. The flowers are able to travel by ship 14 days or more in some cases to Europe, and it's working. And not just with carnations or pom-poms that would be the longest lasting. They're doing roses apparently are not so successful. They've done it, but it's just apparently not as successful.
Yeah, well, they're not as hardy as some of the
Yeah, and I think the breeders have been doing a really good job of sort of breeding things that produce well, that travel well, that perhaps a phenomena that has occurred since you guys have been in the business is the garden rose phenomena. These garden roses that are beautiful and have tremendous fragrance. They got them to last a week or 10 days.
Yeah, and you're right. They've always been more interesting. But,
yeah,
it's not as
it's not your stand as Madame Delbar that's going to look like a Madame Delbar from
right.
day one till day 100.
I remember we actually pulled out varieties that smelled great, looked good, but had short vase lives.
Short vase
That was
life,
one of the things that at the time people didn't seem to appreciate.
Yeah, and since this is a little bit of history from you and I, you guys, I remember a comment that you made. One of you made. I don't remember which one it was. Said you owned the Red Rover business at one point.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that, but you said to me, if you want Red Rovers, you got to call, and we own that business right now. Apparently, you had planted a lot of Red Rovers, and they were in big demand.
Well, we were very fortunate, I think, that back when Peter was still alive, he got his hands on some Red Rover early in the game, grew it as a disc bud. We were able to sell it, not only able to sell it, but it had a huge, it just had a huge market presence. And then, seeing that and moving forward with Peter, it became an important crop at Thanksgiving that we almost had a lock on. I mean, other people had some, but
you had a lot of
it. Yeah.
All right, there's my history lesson, because I remembered that, and I was like, okay. And then you guys built a nice building that Edgar lives in now, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you guys still in the flower business? Or is Miramonte still around, or is it? Did you get rid of that, or is it still there, or what?
No, it's sold.
It did sell. Okay.
Yeah, it's owned by Elite.
Big surprise. Big surprise. All right. Well, look, I told you 20 minutes would go fast, and we're already at 21 minutes, and it's really been a pleasure. I don't know what else to say other than I'm happy to see you guys after all these years. You and I and my dad and whatever have been down a lot of paths together. We saw a lot of things happen in the import business when it came. When I got in the business and saw you guys, there was a dozen importers or something, and now it went crazy. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's gone full circle. There was a whole bunch now. I think there's less, frankly. But
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a tough market for anybody, but right now, if you got flowers, you're making money. So that's the good news. So, um, hey, gentlemen, it's been my pleasure to have this little meeting with you. I haven't seen you guys, and Dwight, I don't think I've seen you in 20 years. I don't know. Jim, I might have bumped into at a convention somewhere, but
Yeah, I think the last time we saw each other, unfortunately, was at your dad's
oh yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Funeral.
passing.
Well, you know, now that mom passed, I'm next in line, so I'm the next generation. And I remember when, maybe you guys were the old guys in the business. I was a young guy, but now I look around and I'm one of the old guys in the business. So it's a little scary, but
Yeah.
but I'm still here. We're still here.
You're old and we're antiques.
Okay, I'll accept that. I'm 69, so I know you guys are older. So, hey, what a
And you're
pleasure to
also a
talk
lot-
to you. Pleasure to
You're
talk to
also
you
a lot
guys.
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And you too. No, I was going to say, and you're still a lot closer to the changes that are occurring.
Yeah,
I
I
understand.
got my ear to the ground, and I started this thing 20 years ago, this little flowers and scents experiment, and it's been popular, and it keeps me, I'm semi-retired, but this keeps me really busy, and I like it, and I enjoy it, and I get the opportunity to have this conversation with my old friends. So I appreciate your time, and thank you, and regards to Gonzalo, because I hope he watches this.
We'll do that. And again, the pleasure was ours.
My pleasure. And I'm going to hit the little button here. We're going to end this, and I'll see y'all later. Thank you.